This KFAN podcast is sponsored by Builders and Remodelers, exclusive Twin Cities provider of Elements Windows. Get the highest quality windows at unmatchable value. Visit buildersandremodelers.com for more details.
When it comes to Mother's Day, at Ritual, we believe in giving her flowers. But are flowers what she actually wants? We asked around, and flowers are fine, but most women would prefer science-backed gut support that never wilts. While we're at it, throw in Stress Relief, our chill pill designed with clinically studied forms of ingredients to reduce daily stress. Did we mention that all of our supplements are clean, vegan, and third-party tested for heavy metals and microbes? Because if you ask us, the thought counts, but traceable science and sourcing count more. Find your Ritual. Get what you really want this year, whether you're a mom or not, with 40% off your first month at ritual.com/podcast. That's RITUAL.com/podcast for 40% off your first month. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Protect.
If you want to chime in what's happening, and you have so far today with your favorite KFAN program, you can make your voice heard as always on the Bradshaw and Bryant text line. Let us know what you have to say by texting the message to 64686, 64686.
Been a nice postseason for Aaron Gordon thus far, is it not?
Big time.
The air ball from desperation shot from Joker that he grabbed out of the air and got into the basket right ahead of the red light going off, probably saving the Nuggets in the series, the previous series against the Clippers. And then he hits the game winner over OKC as well. As I mentioned, Sam Gordon is going to join us about a half hour. He's one of us, and these days is covering the Golden State Warriors on a daily basis. We'll get a scouting report from him on what he expects. And I'm probably going to start with whether he felt the Warriors were as dead and buried as they looked after Game 6 when they had the chance to wrap up the Rockets series, because they looked defeated, I thought, at that point. And clearly they had another round in them. That could be a further testament to the power of savvy veteran guys who've been around the block once or twice and know how to sort of summon up whatever they need to summon up one more time, and what kind of threat they could be for the Wolves as well. This is from John in St. Paul. I lived in Ireland for 4 years, drove through countless roundabouts. They work much better than four-way stops. People just need to learn how to use them. Well, that's stating the obvious. You are correct. My sense is we're actually, the longer we have them, the less equipped we seem, or just we're not interested in following the rules. I know what it was. I understand. Well, I don't care. I'm just going. Dan, I drove through Spain and at one point got stuck on the inner circle of a 4-lane roundabout. Went around probably close to a dozen times in an absolute panic. I can relate to that. Yeah. I can relate to driving in Spain and being in utter and mortal fear almost the entire time on the trip. It actually affected my ability to enjoy the vacation. The driving was that harrowing. Driving. Well, it was a combination of those kinds of things, and just like on their highways, people aren't going 65, 70, 75. They're going 95. Wow. And you got to work around it. You have to find a way to not get crushed, basically. One of the highways involved, I think, was one of the most dangerous in all of Europe, in fact. Somebody's suggesting you need to nut up as opposed to man up, which makes sense. That's right. I forgot too. We amended it to nut up. That's right. Dan, they installed 2-lane roundabouts in Blaine by the sports complex, and nobody seems to know how to drive through them. Half the time, if there is an event going on, they'll have police out just to encourage people to get moving. It's certainly not rocket science, but people never cease to amaze me. Love the program. That's Tim checking in from Ham Lake. In Boston, Dan, these roundabouts are called rotaries. To get through them, you have to be incredibly aggressive, borderline a-hole in the afternoon. Yeah. The problem around here is that you have some aggressive and some defensive drivers, which can turn into a pretty nasty mix on the roundabouts. In the rotaries of Boston, everybody drives at the same aggressive rules. and it actually works much better because you know what to expect. There's something to be said for that. We talked about that as
totally agree.
Driving in expressways in Chicago, for example. Our highways are double A ball compared to several other cities, Chicago included, and you almost have no choice but to if you're passive aggressive in Chicago, you'll die.
You're going to get eaten up.
You're going to get destroyed.
Yes.
Exactly it. And so you almost have to become aggressive without hopefully not becoming so reckless that you die.
Psychologically, it doesn't feel like there are the same consequences when you're driving out east.
I agree.
Or in a bigger city.
I agree.
I think we've talked about this. You do things that you wouldn't do here.
Yes.
But you don't feel guilty about them when you're out there. That's what I've noticed about myself as a driver. I do things I would never do here in a million years. I don't know why. Maybe it's just the survival instinct that kicks in that says, well, I got to do this. I got to move over quickly. I got to do this. I got to cut here. I got to honk at this guy. I got to do something.
Bozos are about to get smashed on motorcycles. Only allegedly allowed these new rules at 15 or 20 miles per hour, and I'm sure that will be followed. Well, we maybe have to do some digging on what's coming in and what's dictating it and how dangerous it might even be. It's even more confusing, writes Lance in Chaska, when every roundabout is different. It could be a 2-lane, but neither have to turn right, or it could be the right lane has to turn, or both have to turn. Or you can only turn left if you voted Democrat, or you can only use the left lane if you make monthly donations to a certain representative.
That is, I think, part of the problem.
It is part of the problem, yeah.
There's not uniformity. And a lot of times you come up on the rules as you come up.
Correct.
To the roundabout. It's not like they're giving you a warning, half mile back. When you get up here, it's 2 lanes. In the right lane, you must turn. Like you sometimes get on this lane must exit if you're on an interstate. You get no warning. So you're coming up there. You're already a little intimidated. You don't know if cars are coming. You don't know which lane you're going into. And then you got to look to the side and see what sign. To look at the sign to see what lane you're supposed to go in if you just want to keep going straight.
Very, very true, David.
So I'll give people a little bit of a break on it.
In a country where we stopped giving students homework because it might hurt their feelings, don't be surprised people aren't smart enough to negotiate a roundabout. That's from Rube Paul. Boy, he's gone
need to nut
big and sweeping
as
in
a
that
country.
regard. So we're not giving students homework anymore? There's no homework for kids? I don't think that's necessarily true. I guess it's possible.
I think we have homework. I know that.
That's for sure.
Ant-Man, Batman, Superman, Lakers in 5.
So there's a controversy about that soundbite. Do you know what it is?
I don't think I do.
I think this is a new version of the original in which the sound quality wasn't very good, but I maintain that his inflection before the Lakers in 5 was better than this new version. I think there's so I'm trying to figure out if somebody from the Wolves said, Ant, man, we need you to say it again.
Redub it.
So that, because this is good material, man. Everybody's talking about it in the country. In fact, didn't you send me yesterday a tweet of an individual trying to play off of it?
Yes, that's the new bit now.
Yes, the new bit is you come up with your own
They were good,
combination. The one he had was excellent. In fact, let me see if I can find it because
I've got it.
Do you have it?
Seth Tupel.
Yeah, it was clever. It was very clever.
Steph Curry, a grand jury, Marc-Andre Fleury, Wolves in 5. Jimmy Butler, Jay Cutler, or the Butler in the study with the candlestick. Not as good, but Wolves in 5.
Right.
Draymond Green, Charlie Sheen, or Sister Jean, Wolves in 5.
Yes.
That's brilliant.
That's very well done.
That's all great.
Yeah, they're all really good. There's some people who are very good at them for sure.
We're done. That's a surprise.
That's not the one I wanted.
You want to give away some money?
Find it. Yeah.
Or are we doing something else?
I'm doing something else here quick. I wanted the original done as, if you can find it, not the Giovanni one from many years ago. This is the end is the one I'm looking for. The Jim Morrison one. So if you find it on the page, let me know, because I do want to squeeze that in before we get to our
I got to remember where that one
break.
is.
It's purple, and I think it's several ones in. I think I can find it actually here pretty quickly. I hope, but it's like a well-oiled machine here, isn't it?
We're locked in.
Here it is.
We're locked in for game
And it's
one.
not purple, it's in gray.
My only friend, the end.
Donald J. Trump today. I love Canada. I have a lot of respect for the Canadians. You happen to have a very, very good hockey player right here on the Capitals. He is a big, tough cookie, too. Just broke the record.
Oh, no.
I think he's referring to Alex Ovechkin.
Well, what records
is he from
about?
Montreal?
I don't think he is.
Isn't he Russian?
That makes his relationship with Putin a little even stranger if he's from Canada.
How good is that? How good is hey? You know, some of my best friends are Canadians, including Alex Ovechkin. Well, he plays a Canadian game, doesn't he?
That's true.
Is it not considered a Canadian game?
It's probably their best game.
Yeah, it probably is. I got a kick out of that one today. How about $1,000 in your hand time? Let's do it.
The Fan and BigDeck.com want to help with that. It is bonus bucks. Go to KFAN.com, enter the keyword bills. Bills is the 4 o'clock keyword. Enter it at KFAN.com.
I'll throw out this question to our audience as we go to break here. The change has happened just as we predicted. The Wolves have gone from no chance to beat the Lakers to no chance to lose to the Warriors and very little chance to not advance as far as the NBA finals. So are you okay with this? Do you go, yeah, why not us? I'm having fun with this. I'm glad people are saying these things about us. Or are you starting to get worried that the world is turning on its axis in a way that inevitably will bite us in the buttock?
When it comes to Mother's Day, at Ritual, we believe in giving her flowers. But are flowers what she actually wants? We asked around, and flowers are fine, but most women would prefer science-backed gut support that never wilts. While we're at it, throw in Stress Relief, our chill pill designed with clinically studied forms of ingredients to reduce daily stress. Did we mention that all of our supplements are clean, vegan, and third-party tested for heavy metals and microbes? Because if you ask us, the thought counts, but traceable science and sourcing count more. Find your Ritual. Get what you really want this year, whether you're a mom or not, with 40% off your first month at ritual.com/podcast. That's RITUAL.com/podcast for 40% off your first month. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Bounce into parlay for our Timberwolves Game 2 watch party, 7:30 on Thursday, May 8th. This coming Thursday, you can join Marnie Gellner for a night of epic prize giveaways, including Timberwolves playoff tickets. Pair the playoff action with music by DJ AO, free food and drink specials. Everyone in attendance will receive a free Timberwolves playoff rally towel. All the details, TICasino.com.
Man up, nut up, shut up, Wolves in 5. Blaine, Spain, Chaska, Alaska, Wolves in 5. Steve Kerr, Adam Burr, Pat Kessler, Wolves in 5. Isn't there supposed to be some rhyming occasionally that goes on? I mean, he started with rhyme. And
those are pretty good rhymes.
Those are pretty good. Steph, Hef, or the ref, Wolves in 5. Green's a goon, wilted Rangoon, meet his match soon, Wolves in 6.
That's a lot of words.
That might be. Wordy. There might be a meter problem there, but
appreciate the effort.
I do appreciate the effort,
yep.
100%. There's no question about that. Well, somebody, by the way, is now trying to make a bigger production of what I think you brought up yesterday. We were doing all of the Wolves rage connections to the Golden State Warriors. They are considerable. And they are rich in history, in basketball history, certainly Wolves basketball history. And one you had brought up was whether Edwards might be able to summon up, even in this case, perhaps manufacture a measure of hatred or resentment for the now famous comments that Warriors head coach Steve Kerr made back in the day, referring to the Ant Edwards workout with Golden State, right? Because they had the second pick.
They did.
Right behind us in that draft. And Kerr, it's been repeated many times in various interviews, that Kerr basically said, well, I thought he was just warming up. And that was his actual workout. And at some point I walk over him to say, can we ratchet this up a little bit? And every time that Edwards has talked about it historically, I don't think he's acted as if he was offended by it. It's been more almost, well, okay, yeah, I can step it up a little bit, and almost as an example of maybe he needed to be told that. Maybe his people needed to be told that a little bit, that there was a need to go at a different speed than whatever speed he thought was okay to go. In fact, I think he talked about, well, I thought I was doing fine.
Yep.
And then they told me I had to do more. I never in the past got the sense from Edwards that he was bitter about it.
No.
But now we're at a place where people are looking for edges. They're looking for stuff.
We need to make him mad.
They're looking for juicy stuff.
Yep.
And you brought it up yesterday because somebody tweeted that we didn't mention that one, but I think you had brought it up. And I put it under the classification of, in my own opinion, it's utterly and completely manufactured, but that in the sports world, we've seen many athletes, starting with Michael Jordan, have no difficulty in ratcheting up, manufacturing, exaggerating a slight if it actually helps fuel him. You would think, because in Michael's case, his speech, his Hall of Fame speech was infamous or famous, depending on how you want to look at it, for grievances that no one had ever even heard of before that he found out, or that, what was the one here? It was, who was the guard who had a good half game against the Bulls?
Martin?
It was Derek Martin, and that became, the Bulls, Jordan and Pippen turned that into something, well beyond, I think, whatever Martin might or might not have said. So could it be that now Ant is going to pretend he was more offended, or he's going to say, I wouldn't mind. I always kind of let that go, and I try to be above board on it. But now that I mention it, maybe that is something else I can show these guys. Whether, well, you don't like my workout? How do you like the way I burn your ass in game one by scoring 40?
In the aftermath and the interim from that, he has talked a lot about, because those clips are coming out now too, of his response to it, that he left that exchange with his trainer. He said, I remember driving and going, well, I don't really know what they're talking about, but we got to do better. He was he wasn't
offended, though.
He was just surprised because he thought he was working hard. And didn't Chris Hine talk about how that was one of the first COVID workouts that Anthony Edwards had done when he came in the studio talking about his book? I'm sure he covered this.
Yeah.
And that might have played into it as well, because all these guys were kind of on their own for that draft, and then they brought them together. It was a late draft because of the pandemic, obviously. But yes, Ant talked about basically being like, well, I don't know what we have to change, but apparently we have to change a lot because what we just did there is not good enough for those guys. So he took it as a positive. We need to somehow make it a negative or a slight.
Yeah, and this will be, I do think this will be a case of utter and complete manufacturing thereof. I'll be honest, because in fact, here's the, who's Underdog? You know who Underdog is? Twitter account, Underdog? Whoever it is.
Is it the guy from TNT that they always talk about? They're one of their producers, Underdog, or is it just a guy that says Underdog?
Because he has a clip of Edwards talking about that experience in front of Kerr, and the moral of the message here on the tweet is Ant now gets a whole series to prove him wrong starting tonight. So, look, I'll have fun with this kind of stuff as much as anybody. This, to me, if it actually gathers any momentum as being meaningful, I think it will be the most obvious example of trying too hard to manufacture something that really, up to this point, hasn't been in any way, shape, or form made into a slight previously by Anthony Edwards. But the world, the viral world in which we live, that's what that person's rooting for. Like, see what Ant's going to do with that. But it's an old quote, and as I mentioned, Edwards has not in the past shown that he's taken any offense to it. But it's now it's out there because at this point, everything's kind of fair game. Let's see if I can get a couple more of the. Everybody's trying to rhyme things these days. Where do we have Biden, Trump, or bump? Wolves in 5. Biden, Trump, or bump? Roundabout, sauerkraut, Draymond pout, Wolves in 5.
Not bad. I like it.
Okay.
Yep. You're at least bringing somebody from the series.
DFL Dan, Common Man, PA is crazy, Wolves in 5. Barrero in an alero with a sombrero, Wolves in 5.
I think we've lost some steam.
You think so?
I think we've lost some steam from the original 3. Golden
State, Butler hate, checkmate. Wolves in 5, baby. Nas Reed, Tara Reid, Jake Reid, Joy Reid, Wolves in 5.
I haven't heard Tara Reid's name in a long time.
No, that's true. That's a good
It's a 90s throwback.
callback.
2000s.
Yeah. Draymond, Kellen Mond, James Bond, Wolves in 5.
Zimmer would like that one.
Finchy, Winchy, Wolves Clinchy in 5. That's from Safety Man Jumbo. No one has answered my question. Are we getting worried? Are we getting worried that we're now the cock of the walk? We have gone from why are we even going to try to beat Luka to it's going to be 4 or 5. It might be 3. If it's possible to win a best-of-7 series in 3, the Wolves might do it. It's an uncomfortable position for the team. It's an uncomfortable position, I know, for Guardsy as a Wolves fan, and I would think for other Wolves fans as well. I think the Wolves are the better team. I do. I think they should win this series. But are we going from one extreme to the other too easily and leaving out the middleman, which in this case involves 3 incredibly accomplished, savvy, basketball. Well, savant might be too strong a term, but basketball talents,
tacticians
who also know how to play with their head, not just their bodies and their ability. Steph's the best shooter ever. We know that. By the way, does anybody? I'm going to ask our 4:30 guest this: does anybody go Steph hunting? Is there such a thing as putting pressure on Steph to play defense in the way that we gloried in making Luka play defense in the last series? Now, Steph's in better shape.
Yeah.
But I don't think anybody views Steph as a great defender individually. So do teams go Steph hunting? Is that a thing?
I think he's a competent enough defender where that becomes difficult to do.
Savvy enough?
Yeah, that would be my instinct there. My worry today is a little bit about the point you're talking about. I would call it the anti-Trudell. Remember when Mike came on before the Lakers
How's he
series?
doing, by the way? Have you talked to him?
I've talked to him a little bit. Yeah, he's okay. Yeah, he's doing all right. I mean, I think he would have liked a couple of more games just because, like me, a lot of times you get paid by the game on something.
Sure.
So even if you know it's going to end, games 5 and 6, 6, 7 would have been nice. But Trudell, when you asked him about the Wolves' path, if you recall, he painted a very narrow path to victory for the Timberwolves. Essentially, if all these guys go nuts, they could probably steal a game or two. That, to me, is happening right now in reverse for the Warriors, where really the number one thing people are talking about in all the stuff I've listened to in the last 72 hours is the one X factor is, can the if Steph gets going and all of a sudden has 30 like he did against the Wolves all season.
Pretty much every game.
We don't have a great Steph stopper. Jaden's not great at it.
Jaden's probably is as good as he moves. I think it's a little bit of an unfair matchup to ask somebody who's his height.
And to just chase him around forever.
Yeah, to chase him around. That's the more than, because you don't have to chase Luka the same way. No. It's a completely different kind of a thing. Or several other scores.
And just the way that the Warriors do offense is not good for the way the Wolves do defense typically, because it's a lot of cutting, it's a lot of moving. We have guys that fall asleep off the ball. Anthony Edwards, number 1 on that list. Randall has shown he can do that, where if it's just an ISO physical deal, Wolves are very good. But the pathway that's being created for the Warriors right now is, well, they still have Steph who can go off, and if they hit a bunch of threes, they're going to be trouble. I think, is it really just that easy for the Wolves? Because they have advantages at all these other spots with depth and height and everything that comes with it, and probably the best player right now in Anthony Edwards? That's what worries me.
I do think, though, I do think the depth is a significant, should be, again, a significant advantage.
Totally should be.
We'll talk about that with Sam Gordon. I think that's a big part of it, but it's gone. It's like I said, it's just gone from crazy to crazy on the other end of the spectrum too easily, and that can be dangerous for a team that I do think kind of likes to be sort of lying in the weeds a little bit. How about bring ass, make it fast, Wolves in 5? That's Solid Blaine. It's a callback to last year too. Let's stay on schedule and let's get a Golden State perspective. Sam Gordon has covered this team all season. And we'll get a Warriors scouting report from him where he thinks the Warriors might be able to make the Wolves pay, where he thinks the Warriors might be most vulnerable as well. And about an hour from now, Luigi to talk Stanley Cup playoff.
When it comes to Mother's Day, at Ritual, we believe in giving her flowers. But are flowers what she actually wants? We asked around, and flowers are fine, but most women would prefer science-backed gut support that never wilts. While we're at it, throw in stress relief, our chill pill designed with clinically studied forms of ingredients to reduce daily stress. Did we mention that all of our supplements are clean, vegan, and third-party tested for heavy metals and microbes? Because if you ask us, the thought counts, but traceable science and sourcing count more. Find your ritual. Get what you really want this year, whether you're a mom or not, with 40% off your first month at ritual.com/podcast. That's RITUAL.com/podcast for 40% off your first month. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Fan.
What time's our coverage tonight begin on Game 1, Western Conference semifinal series?
The homies will be howling right at 6:30.
6:30 tonight from the Cage, I'm hoping?
They will be at the Cage, Max and Parker Fox.
We will be at the Cage for the Thursday night game with a little better, more favorable start time with a cavalcade of outstanding guests. We're pleased to be joined now by Sam Gordon, who covers the Golden State Warriors for the San Francisco Chronicle. He joins us via the Connecticut Water Systems Hotline. I want to apologize first for suggesting earlier that you wrote for the Examiner. That may have been wishful thinking on my part because I'm a big old newspaper guy and I love the old days of the Chronicle and the Examiner, but you're a Chronicle guy. And I've got a text that came in anticipation of your visit from Dry Heat Guy, also known as Josh from Lakeville. Please say hi to Sam. I used to work for the Vegas Review-Journal as a photographer right when he started there. So you're... every place you go, man, people remember you.
That's crazy. That blows my mind hearing that and thinking about it. Shout out to Josh. It's a small world, and it is a honor and privilege to be on the show and to be back in my hometown of Minneapolis, doing what I'm doing, covering the Golden State Warriors. So privilege working for the Chronicle. Going to be a great series with the opener tonight. And, again, thanks for having me. Shout out, Josh. Appreciate the text.
Let's go back to the beginning basically when I say the beginning of when the Warriors acquired Butler, because clearly the Warriors, in terms of the regular season, and even, I guess, to this point, because they got out of the first round, including the postseason, cannot be any happier about what he has added to the mix. What he has done to the Golden State Warriors cocktail, added some fizz, added some stability in some ways, too, added a guy who can get to the free throw line. So if you go back to when you were covering it then, are you astonished how much it helped? Because a lot of times moves are made like this that in theory look good, and Butler obviously can be a really good player, but you say, well, really, how quickly and how much can things change here? What did you think of the move then? What do you think of the move now?
Yeah, I mean, certainly at the time, thought, had questions about the fit, right? Wasn't necessarily sure how it was going to fit from a stylistic standpoint in the sense that, with Miami, for as much as they move the ball and as for well-oiled as they were, he would tend to hold it. Best on the ball, best holding it, best in isolation situations,
Yep.
And that's not necessarily how the Warriors obviously have played, right? With Steph Curry, a lot of read and react, a lot of motion. So certainly had, questions, how quickly would this gel? How would the adjustment go? Obviously understood the move, right? There's a team that starts the season 12-3. They're on fire playing 11, 12, 13 guys, very unique at the NBA level. Doesn't happen. DeAnthony Melton goes down. They lose a couple games big in the fourth quarter, and then it's a 13-23 stretch. So going into that, into the trade deadline week, it's very clear it's a team that had, little to no juice. They hadn't, given up by any means. They were, they maintained a top 10 defense, the entire time. You still had Steph Curry. You still had Draymond Green. They were, competing to the point that they could, but just not enough juice offensively to get them through games. So you knew they had to do something. And by that point, that week of the trade deadline, considering what was happening in Miami, the value made sense. It was a perfect trade for the Warriors given where they were at. And, first round pick, Andrew Wiggins, Dennis Schroeder, Kyle Anderson, couple rotation players. But what the trade did, right? You get a second shot creator, obviously somebody that's brilliantly played off of Steph Curry. It was obvious the instant they debuted together that weekend against the Chicago Bulls how seamless of a fit, and it's, all the questions were answered right away. Butler is a brilliant basketball player, and kind of eased his way in there, right? And yep. they blow out the Bulls. That first game, it consolidates the rotation, a lot of overlapping skill sets and a lot of specialists at that time. So it consolidates the rotation. It consolidates the roster. They solidified this, small ball starting lineup. Who's played small ball better than the Golden State Warriors the last decade? Jimmy Butler slides into the small ball, starting lineup at power forward, Draymond Green at center. Mm-hmm. And lo and behold, the Warriors go 23-8 behind the league's best defense. They beat all the teams they're supposed to beat. And, some of the ones that they weren't, quote unquote, necessarily supposed to beat, to put them in this position. And, they've gone on record several times. Steve Kerr, Draymond Green, Steph Curry, Jimmy Butler saved the season. So it was a well-calculated risk. I think they definitely carried some risk at the time, but Butler comes to town. They get the extension done, and he has been spectacular in every sense of the word since the Warriors got him. And, not lo and behold, they're here after that 13-23 stretch. They're in the mix, one of the last 8, and feel like they have a chance. The belief changed right away. That was the biggest thing that flipped, and then what happened on the court followed and justified that belief.
Well, one of the things we've talked about on this show is that, and look, Butler, the way he has scorched organizations on the way out, like a lot of people think, inexcusable, unprofessional. On the other hand, we're evaluating now on the basis of where he is now and on the honeymoon period where everybody agrees he can be an absolutely beast of a basketball player. But what strikes me is you have in the Warriors' big three, and this I think is sort of why it came together as quickly as it did. When you have people who are really smart basketball players who play it as much between the ears as they do with physically that they can do, they can figure it out. Players like that can figure it out fast. They can figure out how they can play off of each other, how they can work to each other's advantage. And to me, that's a lot of this story, that the idea that it takes years, for teams to come together. If you got individual players who know how to play and know how to play off each other, it may not have to take that long. And to me, these guys, those three are a testament to that very fact.
100%, right? 23-8 down the stretch, league's best defense. You see right away, Jimmy Butler can play in the motion offense. He knows all the reads, knows the spots to be on the floor, figured out very quickly how to screen for Steph Curry, where to screen for Steph Curry. And then, offensively, he gives them a whole other dynamic. He gives them this kind of slow-paced power game that balances what Curry does, that, Curry's going to create advantages for everybody inherently, including Butler. But now, just like he had with Kevin Durant and Klay Thompson and so on and so forth, now he's having an offensive player, somebody that's creating advantages for him too, and that can use possessions, that can get to the free throw line, that can slow the game down, so on and so forth. And you're 100% right. I mean, it's the cerebral element of the game. That's, for as great as the Warriors have been, for all the firepower and all the offense and all the three-point shooting and, how dynamic they've been, like the backbone of this thing has been high-level execution, high IQ, situational basketball, and the things that Butler has had a mastery of for a really, really long time. So it all came together, and with Butler coming into the fold, it crystallizes, Brandon Podziemski's role as a secondary, tertiary ball handler, scorer. Moses Moody steps into a role as a spot-up shooter that's guarding on the perimeter now, guarding at the point of attack. The bench group, gets solidified. Buddy Hield, Gary Payton II, what Kevon Looney brings to the table, rookie center, second-round pick, Quentin Post, spacing the floor. Everything came together with Butler coming into the fold. It once again, like it has been for the last 10-plus years, a very high IQ team, very savvy, very poised, seen it all. Butler's been to 2 finals, right? He's seen everything you can see, and that all kind of came to a head in the last series against Houston in Game 7. They walked down the Rockets in their place on the strength of their guile, their physicality as a small ball group, and their experience. And again, it sets up what's going to be a fantastic series with the Wolves, considering how well they're playing. The dynamic at play, and it's going to be fantastic. But yep, you're 100% right. IQ, before all else.
Minnesota's own Sam Gordon covers the Golden State Warriors for the San Francisco Chronicle. He'll be, of course, in place tonight at Target Center for game number 1. You mentioned the Rockets series. I have to tell you that as much playoff basketball, as I've covered and followed, I, like a lot of people, fell into the trap after watching the Warriors' performance in Game 6 when they had a chance to wrap it up at home. I mean, I saw, in fact, there was a piece in The Athletic that was basically, it seemed like it was a funeral dirge. It was an obituary that it's over. And I kind of felt that, even though I'm thinking, yeah, but Houston's young, and can they finish the job? And it's still some veteran players. But tell me what the feeling like was with the team and what you observed and how concerned you were at that point, whether the Warriors could, despite that intelligence, despite that championship pedigree, could summon up the Game 7 they did, as bad as they looked at the end of Game 6.
Yeah, I mean, they put themselves in a position where they had to go on the road and obviously win a Game 7 against a team that, in that Game 5, too, was a total no-show by the Warriors. That game was over in the first quarter. They had absolutely nothing. You see the speed, the physicality, the youth of Houston, the depth at the point of attack, right, with their wings that they were throwing at Steph Curry, the scheme, the zone defense, all the different looks, the tentativeness that the Warriors showed, and just the kind of like the general sense of fatigue that seemed to kind of take over there in the fourth quarter of that Game 6. But you get post-game, like, they had already moved on. Nobody used fatigue as an excuse. There were absolutely no excuses whatsoever. Everybody came to the podium and said, look, we got to get the 50-50s. That was the general sense of the messaging. And when you have Steph Curry, you have Steve Kerr, you have Draymond Green, you have Jimmy Butler, that confidence, that experience is going to bleed over into everybody else, into the younger players. So, yeah, they looked at it as certainly a missed opportunity, and it was. It was definitely a missed opportunity. They would have loved to have a couple days off, considering where they're at. Probably would have not, didn't necessarily, obviously, not want to get on the plane to Houston and have to, quote unquote, empty the tank. But they never blinked, they never folded. They have won road Game 7s before. That group, Jimmy Butler had won a road Game 7 over the Boston Celtics after losing a 3-0 lead a couple years ago. And it was total calm, total, all business. And that's what this was for the Warriors. It was an absolute business trip. They came out and did exactly what they said they were going to do. They were going to get the 50-50 balls. They did a much better job at that. They were going to limit their turnovers, 17 in Game 6, 7 in Game 7. And they were going to rely on the greatness of their future Hall of Fame players. Draymond Green led a masterclass on defense. Yeah. Jimmy Butler did exactly what he had to do when the situation called for it. You got a monster game from Buddy Hield shooting the Rockets out of that zone, and Steph Curry was Steph Curry, playing 40-plus minutes, controlling the game when his shot wasn't falling in the first half, and when it was time to put the Rockets away, he stepped on them with 14 fourth-quarter points. So it speaks to, again, the championship pedigree, the class of the organization, the skill and talent of these players still at this stage of their career, and the way it's all come together. Young players getting great experience over a younger, bigger, more physical team, kind of like the one that they're gonna play starting tonight in a 7-game series. They haven't the experience now taking out a team like that in the first round. So they are coming into Minneapolis with a lot of confidence. Maybe a little tired, didn't want to go 7 games, but plenty of confidence with what they accomplished, considering how well Houston was playing to get back in that series and what Houston brought to the table all season. You know what the Wolves did to the Lakers in the opening round, winning in 5 games. So tell me what you think, or what the people you talk to when you're doing your reporting think, the places where the Warriors could be a greater challenge to the Wolves than the Lakers ultimately turned out to be. Yeah, I mean, it's the Lakers, for all their kind of firepower, right, were pretty predictable in the sense of, in the way that they played. Mm-hmm. A lot of isolation, pick and roll, looking for matchups or whatnot. The Wolves had the personnel and the depth that, we saw what happened over 5 games to pretty much erase that. The Wolves are preparing for something totally different stylistically than any other team in the league. They are playing and scheming against the unpredictability of Steph Curry. I mean, it is what it is. The Warriors were 3-1 against the Wolves this year, and I don't think you take these regular season statistics with a grain of salt, considering how different the teams are and considering how different playoff basketball was in general. But nobody guarded Steph Curry more than Jaden McDaniels did this season. Curry was 9 of 34 against McDaniels, 5 of 20 from deep. McDaniels did a phenomenal job, and yet the Warriors still went 3-1, and Curry averaged 29 and almost 8 assists over those 4 matchups because even because you can't guard him with one player. Yeah. It takes, team scheme, everybody involved, all five on a string, not losing awareness of where he was. And the Rockets, they came up short, put together, a heck of an effort at doing that with, again, their depth at point of attack, the zone they were able to implement, kind of a matchup zone with whatever vicinity Curry was in, that whatever closest defender kind of pinned themselves to him and tried to get the others to make shots. It just so happened the Warriors, if they solved that in Game 7 with their experience, but the Rockets did a heck of a job. And point being, it takes five. It takes a whole team, scheme, awareness, all those things. To stop him. You're trying to limit, the 3-point shots he's taking. You're trying to limit him from shooting. And in doing that creates advantages for other players. It just does. His ability to draw scheme and defensive coverages. So now, kind of like we talked about, Butler's, going to look for mismatches against guards to kind of bully. And you're just trying to bend the defense and play advantage basketball. So, I would imagine the Warriors, again, they're going to lean on what got them there. Certainly there's going to be matchups, stylistic things, counters, adjustments over the course of the series to deal with what the Wolves bring to the table, their size, their length, what they do at the interior, Rudy Gobert and whatnot. But the Wolves are going to have to contend with what they do too, and that's unpredictable small ball with. Still one of the greatest players of all time who still showed that he can dial up big games and win games against the Rockets, and then a confident group, playing alongside him that are going to get him going, alternating, with the slow-paced style of Jimmy Butler. So the Wolves obviously have their advantages in this series, their length, their size, their depth at the point of attack, their depth in general, the rest, the youth, still very experienced themselves, but this is the championship pedigree, the unpredictability that the Warriors bring to the table, and kind of their decade-long mastery of small ball is going to present its own challenges over the course of the series. And it's styles make fights in boxing, styles make series in playoff matchups, and we're going to see two very contrasting styles go at it starting tonight. It's going to be fun.
The Lakers' depth or lack thereof was a problem, or maybe if they had some, Redick didn't trust it. So that became a huge storyline over the course of the series, as you know, to the point where Redick played all five of his starters for the entire second half as well, and then went even smaller, and thereby taking another player completely out of the equation. Tell me a little bit about how the Golden State depth compares to what the Lakers have, and even give us a little bit of an injury update, because I do think there's at least one Warrior who is listed, last I saw, listed as questionable for tonight.
Yeah, Gary Payton II, right? We'll do the injury update first. Gary Payton II, who one of the primary point of attack defenders on Anthony Edwards this year, did a solid job in regular season play, and point of attack at times, during the second half of the season has been an issue for the Warriors. If there's been a weakness with their defense, it's been speed guards, big wings. Right. It just so happens that Anthony Edwards is a big speed guard that can do everything. So they're certainly going to have their hands full with him. That was going to be the case with GP2, and if he's on the shelf, he was also dealing with an illness. He was at shoot-around today, but wasn't as active as other players were at shoot-around, so we'll get an update here as we get closer. But he's a key player in the series, given, his experience at the point of attack and what he brings to the table and how important he is for a team, light on point of attack defense, kind of your traditional stoppers. As it is. And what was the other question you had there?
The other question was generally, how would you assess Warriors' depth? Yeah. How deep into the bench does Steve Kerr like to go with this new iteration of the team compared to the Lakers, who obviously had significant depth issues in the previous series?
Yeah, it's been 7, 8, sometimes 9 deep. Now in a Game 7 situation, it was 6.5, right? It was the starters. It was Moses Moody some at the swing spot. It was Kevon Looney for some minutes at the center spot. Quentin Post got a look off the bench, and then Jonathan Kuminga some too. But for the most part, they start with a small ball grouping, and then there's bigger lineups that involve either Kevon Looney doing what he does, kind of the dirty work, screen setting, banging in the paint. The Warriors have been able to count on that, certainly situationally in some playoff series more than others, but certainly situationally for the last decade. And then you have the rookie big man, Quentin Post, that is what the Warriors haven't had, during this run, this decade-long run, is this 7-footer that shoots 40% from three. So he had his ups and downs during the Rocket series. He is a rookie. He had one game where he had 12 boards, and then he had one game where he had 5 fouls in the snap of a finger. So, at this stage of the season, it's all about matchups and whatnot, but Kerr has no problem going 8-9 deep. Jonathan Kuminga was out of the rotation and then got a look in Game 7. So you never know if the Warriors might need his athleticism, his length for minutes against Anthony Edwards, for minutes against Julius Randle to match up with the Wolves, who have a lot of length and a lot of athleticism. Again, Gary Payton II, 15, 20 minutes a game in different lineups. But at this stage of the season, it's Curry and Butler, 38 to 40 minutes. Butler on the other side of 40 sometimes. It's Green, 35 to 40, and then it's Brandon Podziemski, Buddy Hield, and Moses Moody as those next three, with other guys getting spot minutes behind them. So Kerr's been in these situations, a bunch. Has a great feel, as good of a feel as anybody for kind of how to manage his roster and how to manage personnel and rotations over the course of a 7-game series. And even though it's a quick turnaround, I imagine he'll have a feel for that pretty quickly as the series starts to unfold.
What kind of sense do you get on? You mentioned, Draymond Green, for all of his agitation, and even I would say some of his skills being diminished, is still he did offer up a master's class in defensive performance. He's still an effective player for what he can do, and a unique player in that regard. But the other part of it with Draymond is agitating, and we know about the history with Rudy in particular here. We know, Jaden's a guy sometimes can get frustrated, kind of a short fuse, foul trouble, the whole bit. So what's your sense on how much of the Draymond objective is going to be not just the stuff that he can do from a basketball standpoint, but the agitation part of it?
Well, it's all about towing that line, right? And there's certainly an element of whatever you want to call it, right? Psychological, warfare, however you want to term it, that goes into these playoff series from him. And the key is to toe the line. It's to, play. And the Warriors know this, right? In order for him to be at his best, there's a certain level of emotion, of enthusiasm, whatever you want to call it, right, that he's going to have to play with. And the key is to not let that, spill overboard into an ejection, into, flagrant foul, into a couple of technicals. And in that first, that first series, he walked that line, right? Now there was that kind of that question mark in Game 4. He got whistled for a flagrant foul with a play that easily could have been, called a technical. He had already had a technical foul. If that gets whistled as a technical, where he, more or less kicked Tari Eason, he's ejected and the whole series changes. So that's not to say there weren't moments where it was close calls and whatnot. And he had a flagrant foul early in Game 6 against Jalen Green. And, the Warriors were all very transparent after Game 7 that they felt like that kind of took them out of the rhythm. It took him out of his game. He has to be locked in, and the rest of the group follows because he is that emotional drumbeat. And lo and behold, Game 7, he delivers that masterclass, as you said. So there's 100% an understanding of what he has to bring to the table, both physically, mentally, and emotionally. Steve Kerr and Draymond had a long talk on the sideline during shoot-around at Game 7 about that very element, about the importance of his leadership, about the importance of playing with emotion but letting that fuel his team more than get in his own way. And he brought that to the table in Game 7. So you have to imagine that's going to be certainly a big pivot point in this series, that there's an understanding, a team-wide understanding, certainly a personal level of understanding that he is going to have to play bigger than his stature, do what he's been doing the last 11 years as a small ball 5. And part of that, involves punching above your weight class, sometimes literally, so to speak, right? And we mean that within the confines of play. But not letting it flow overboard. So that's going to be key. Certainly he's focused on that, and that center matchup, right? Draymond Green, Rudy Gobert, one of the pivot points in the series. Who can impose their will? The Wolves with their size, or the Warriors with their small ball attack?
Sam, last item for you. What is Draymond like to cover as a reporter?
Great, spectacular. I've had, nothing but positive interactions. He's introspective post games. He has a way of explaining nuanced strategy in a way that's easy for us as media to understand, or relatively easy for us as media to understand, and hopefully in a way that fans can understand as well. And there's a realness to him. There's a vulnerability to him, right? And again, sometimes that's obviously worked against him in his own career, and you can't blame any athlete for not wanting to be vulnerable to the media. That's their right, that's their prerogative. Totally understand and respect that. But because there is that vulnerability, because there is this willingness to explain basketball from his perspective and his willingness to, talk about, a few different things. I have a human interest piece that I'm working on that has absolutely nothing to do with basketball. And just after shoot around today, he took a few minutes to talk to me about a staffer on the team that I'm going to be writing about in a story that hopefully comes out, this series, somebody that he's close with, and was really thoughtful about just the way that he talks. So he's one of the more thoughtful, nuanced, interesting athletes that I've ever covered. And kind of where I've landed is that people are really complex, right? There's so many different sides to people, and people are really complex, and we see that play out in a bunch of different ways. But my interactions with him have been nothing but positive. The interactions that I've seen, at the podium and whatnot, in public, behind the scenes, have been nothing but positive. And since I've been on the beat, right, like he had come back from suspension last year. When I had started on the beat, there was no suspensions this year. There was only, I think, one ejection early in the season, and he's been the leader that this team has needed, both on the floor, off the floor, in the locker room, as this group, fights to basically extend, the very last days of its dynasty. So I've really enjoyed it. He's been fascinating to cover. He's been great to cover, and looking forward to seeing how he, influences this series in one way or the other for the Wolves and the Warriors. It's going to be a fascinating matchup, and he's going to be at front and center of it if the Warriors are going to win or if the Wolves are going to win. That's a huge pivot point, huge matchup, and I've really enjoyed covering them.
Sam, have fun tonight. Good to catch up with you as always. We appreciate the insight, and we'll talk to you soon. See you soon. Thanks again.
Very much appreciated, Dan.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Sam.
Enjoy the series.
Indeed. Sam Gordon covers the Golden State Warriors for the San Francisco Chronicle. I know he did something that Wolves fans will consider sacrilegious. He said some nice things about Draymond Green, but I asked him specifically that question for a very specific reason, because I do think, his record's his record, but none of that necessarily means that in dealing with reporters, he's impossible to deal with. I'm always interested in, well, how does a day-to-day conversation go? Because if you're a beat reporter, you're there every day. So we'll follow up with a couple things on that, reacting to what Sam had to say. We've got Louis coming up in about 30 minutes. We've got the Top 5 at 5 next with
Bill Guerin, Twins attendance, Barron, Top 5 at 5.
When it comes to Mother's Day, at Ritual, we believe in giving her flowers. But are flowers what she actually wants? We asked around, and flowers are fine, but most women would prefer science-backed gut support that never wilts. While we're at it, throw in Stress Relief, our chill pill designed with clinically studied forms of ingredients to reduce daily stress. Did we mention that all of our supplements are clean, vegan, and third-party tested for heavy metals and microbes? Because if you ask us, the thought counts, but traceable science and sourcing count more. Find your Ritual. Get what you really want this year, whether you're a mom or not, with 40% off your first month at ritual.com/podcast. That's RITUAL.com/podcast for 40% off your first month. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.